So sharing our professional expertise in social networking, something that's a valuable thing to do, especially in the healthcare realm where there's a lot of people who need good health advice. And if you have expertise in that realm, it's a valuable use of social networking to contribute that. Well, but sometimes that can get into sticky situations and maybe cause somebody to go somewhere they wouldn't have gone. And we had an example of that with one of our employers we had done some training for, is that they had one of their nurses previously that had worked with a diabetic patient one afternoon and was really impacted by this patient who had not taken care of themselves. And got home that evening and decided she was going to post to all her friends on Facebook and drive the point home that if you're diabetic, you really need to take care of yourself, being impacted by seeing somebody who hadn't been doing that. So she decided that to just make a comment that, hey, if you're a diabetic, you really need to take care of yourself, and to drive the point home, which was effective, I guess, to those she was communicating with, is she actually uploaded the picture of that patient's feet, which were in really rough shape, onto her personal Facebook page to drive the point home. And they weren't little cute baby picture feet like you're seeing here. Obviously, we wouldn't share those with you. But at the end of the day, probably drove that point home really well. But what is now the perception of that organization to maybe those who see that, wow, their employees post up pictures of their patient's feet on their personal Facebook pages? Didn't have an identifier that led to who the patient was, but and you can argue a HIPAA violation or not. But the reality is the public perception of that is extremely the wrong message that needs to be sent. This employer decided to fire this employee over that breach of confidence within the community. One of the important things to know here is disclaimers are extremely important as well, that if you're going to post professional advice, that you just put a disclaimer within that post or on your page that I'm not speaking on behalf of my employer here. This is my personal professional opinion, is a wise thing to do if you're going to share professional expertise, because there is a lot of value there. And it is something that I think if we have expertise, we should do. Now, for doctors, we think of those who can make a mistake here, and we wouldn't always put doctors in the category. They understand HIPAA, right? They wouldn't go to that extent. Well, not always the case as well. This was an ER doctor who recently was fired from her employer because while working in the ER, she posted a little bit of information about a trauma patient. And actually to her Twitter profile, just from her cell phone while at work. Obviously, interesting cases come into the ER, sometimes public situations. Didn't think it through all the way, and she had a major consequence to that. Actually realized in this situation the next day that she probably shouldn't have posted that, and she pulled it down from her Twitter post and took it off. But the reality is we can't take things offline. And even if after the fact, when she took initially maybe a short amount of time to completely consider what am I posting, what will be the ramifications of it, didn't think that through all the way. And even later on when she did, we can't take things back. It had been shared and had been seen. She was fired. She was reported to the health board. She actually had to pay a state fine as well. And now if you go and Google this doctor's name, you will see pages of stories on the doctor that was fired for posting from her Twitter page from her phone while working in the ER. Now, is that going to help her cause getting another job? It's a substantial consequence to her name, her professional identity, in one mistake she made without thinking it all the way through. So, need to be extremely careful in these regards as well.